And I saw a video led by Malema of 90,000 people in a stadium shouting, "Kill the Boer." I mean, just really disgusting. It reminded me of Rwanda. It actually reminded me of everything that I fear for and about Africa. But if he can fill a stadium of 90,000 people who will chant something like that, what does that say about South Africa in the coming years?
We have a very small tax base. I think about 1 in 30 South Africans pay 85% of the taxes. So when you reduce the tax base and you reduce the entrepreneurial base, and you then have an environment where it's very difficult to employ people, you're of course going to have these racial tensions. One of the most heart-wrenching cases that we dealt with was a mother and daughter who had been slaughtered in their house. They had been so brutalized with broken bottles that it was unclear to the police whether they had also been raped. And Kill the Boer was written in blood above their bodies. And when I asked Mr. Malema about this in cross-examination, he
Guys, this whole issue with the Kill the Boer chant in South Africa is taking a different turn. Many people, activists, are beginning to zone in to understand what it is that the EFF and the likes of Julius Malema actually see that keeps them singing the chant on and on, even as recently as the last human rights event in South Africa. Many researchers, thinkers are really trying to go in and zone in to understand why this whole thing with the Kill the Boer chant still goes on in South Africa. Now we have this really powerful Somali-born Dutch American activist. Her name is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She's actually conducting this podcast here with Mark Oppenheimer, right? Who is actually giving some really graphic details about his experience, especially I think as a lawyer. He was a lawyer at the time who defended, I think he was a representative for AfriForum, and I think that one of the first times I met him was in a clash he had in court with Julius Malema. But in this video, they're really discussing a lot of really interesting issues about a really, really terrible incident they had, or he experienced, that actually had something to do with the whole Kill the Boer, issue. And this is in light of the fact that there's been a report I saw on Al Jazeera that actually argued that, the whole thing with the song Dubuli Punu, which actually is translated as Shoot the Boer, was actually in 2010 kind of like ruled as hate speech by the Gauteng High Court. But by 2022, that ruling was overturned, I think, by the Equality Court or something like that. Or sorry, by the High Court in Johannesburg, where it says that this song, or the Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer thing, was neither a hate speech or an incitement to violence. And so these are the two poles for which the argument to continue to sing this song, which might be an incitement to violence, is actually being kind of like confronted by many legal entities in South Africa. Let's just quickly listen to how
I'll get back to that. I just want to get this a clear picture of the distinction between the ANC and their adherence to communist or Marxist principles, and the other party that is actually the Communist Party of South Africa. What is the difference, and also their leadership? Just talk us through that.
Yeah, so the South African Communist Party have traditionally not they've not contested elections. They have now said that the ANC have sold out their ideals by joining the Government of National Unity, and that they intend on contesting the next elections. What you typically have is that ANC members are dual members. So our Minister of Finance, our Minister of Trade and Industry, a lot of those people have been members of the Communist Party as well. There's quite a famous picture of Nelson Mandela standing in front of a hammer and sickle with his fist raised in the air. The Communist Party was sort of seen as an anti-apartheid force, and so those ideas haven't really been abandoned. A lot of ANC officials, when they were in exile, trained in the Soviet Union, and so there's a kind of allegiance to those values. There's besides the ANC, there's the economic freedom fighters, so led by Julius Malema, and he was a very prominent member in the ANC's youth league, and then was expelled, and started the economic freedom fighters, and they described themselves as a Marxist-Leninist party, and sort of strong race nationalists and radicals.
Yeah. And I saw a video led by Malema of 90,000 people in a stadium shouting, "Kill the Boer." And I mean, just really disgusting. It reminded me of Rwanda. It actually reminded me of everything that I fear for and about Africa, which is sometimes this madness of crowds that sometimes it can be a tribe or it can be within a nation, but people just embark on genocidal mania. And that's what this video reminded me of. But you are saying this Malema guy is considered even extreme by the ANC. But if he can fill a stadium of 90,000 people who will chant something like that, what does that say about South Africa in the coming years?
It's very worrying. So that chant, "Kill the Boer," was the subject of litigation that I ran on behalf of a client called AfriForum. So AfriForum are the biggest civil rights organization on the continent. They have about 300,000 members, and they laid a hate speech complaint against Mr. Malema and the EFF for singing the song. And we led a lot of evidence during this trial about the kind of real-world effects of singing these songs. One of the most heart-wrenching cases that we dealt with was a mother and daughter who had been slaughtered in their house. They had been so brutalized with broken bottles that it was unclear to the police whether they had also been raped. And "Kill the Boer" was written in blood above their bodies. And when I asked Mr. Malema about this in cross-examination, he refused to condemn it or see it as a racist attack. There's a sort of denial that black people can be racist towards white people. What was quite shocking about the trial, we ran for 9 days, it was publicly televised, and there was an enormous amount of evidence about the real-world effects of the speech, the brutal farm murders that occur, often racially charged. And unfortunately, one of the sort of terrible parallels with those farm murders is that they look quite similar to what occurred on October 7th in Israel. There's a sense in which Jews and Afrikaners walk parallel paths when you look at the brutality of those crimes, and how they're not merely financial crimes. Often what happens is that people are tied up, tortured for hours, drills put through their knees, their feet are burnt.
Crimes of hatred.
Nothing will be stolen. There's an extreme amount of hatred, and then it's stoked up by politicians who can then, after that trial, sing "Kill the Boer" in that 90,000-seater stadium because he was exonerated by the court. And so there's this worry that there's a kind of encroaching double standard. There are white people who have been jailed for using racial slurs, but you don't have the sort of equivalent. And those white people tended to be absolute nobodies, real estate agents, people who kind of were private individuals as opposed to very powerful politicians with big followings.
What's even more remarkable is very little of what you are saying has made it to the mainstream media in America and elsewhere. I mean, it is, like I said, it's the most covered up big story. This is the sort of story that would be, on the front page of every newspaper if we had a normal, healthy mediascape. And the question to you is, why is it? Why not report on it?
I think there's a sense in which the story that people want to have about South Africa is the miraculous story. And there was a miraculous story. We averted a civil war. We had this incredible constitution, this multiracial democracy. And then people said, let's tie a bow on it and forget about it. And so if you don't look at what occurs over the last 30 years, when things come out that don't suit that narrative, then the view is to say, let's not talk about it. It's embarrassing. For example, the farm murders, there's sort of been a concerted effort to say that what's being claimed is that there's a white genocide going on in South Africa, and there isn't. And no credible organization in South Africa ever claims that there's a white genocide. But that straw man is such a useful way of silencing real-world problems like farm murders. which are disproportionately violent and happen in disproportionate numbers to the ordinary levels of violence we have in South Africa. So just to give you an example, our murder rate in South Africa is about 33 out of 100,000. I think in America it's about 5 out of 100,000. Of those who are murdered, about 5 occur from intruder attacks. All farm murders are necessarily intruder attacks, and the farmer murder rate is about 100 out of 100,000. So 20 times the ordinary kill rate. And to talk about this in South Africa is sort of seen as very controversial. The press will, want to quell it or describe it as claiming that they're white genocide lines, but it's a real problem.
It's a real problem, and it is a symptom of rising racial tensions. And an unintended consequence of that is capital flight. It's the flight of the middle classes, and therefore the economy getting ever more challenged.
Without a doubt. So you've had many South Africans flee the country. And I think there are about 1 million South Africans who live abroad, either in America or Canada or Israel or the UK. And often what you've had is those that were very productive, and we have a very small tax base. I think about 1 in 30 South Africans pay 85% of the taxes. So when you reduce the tax base and you reduce the entrepreneurial base, and you then have an environment where it's very difficult to employ people, you're of course going to have these racial tensions. And it's a useful device for politicians to sort of stoke up, to explain away their failures. Why are things so terrible? Well, it's because the whites have all the property and we need to take it from them.
Africa, usually translated as Dubuli Punu in Xhosa, it actually says that it is translated as shoot the Boer or kill the Boer or kill the farmer. Now, for me, I found it really interesting that in 2010, it says here that a South African Gauteng High Court ruled the song or the kind of like expression as hate speech, but this ruling was overturned in 2022 by a high court in Johannesburg, which actually then ruled that Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer was neither a hate speech or an incitement to violence. So probably this is the reason why the likes of the EFF, the likes of Julius Malema, do not see any reason to stop chanting the chant, with as much as, according to Ayaan Hirsi, as you heard, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, she says that as much as 90,000, I don't know how she got that statistics anyway, so she argues that as much as 90,000 people were gathered in the stadium to sing this song, and what this really implies, for the future of South Africa. Mark Oppenheimer really has some really interesting responses. So I really don't know how else to... This is a kind of like a touching one. I don't want this video to be long, but I found a report on Al Jazeera that actually goes deep into, Marco Rubio's highlighting of this whole Kill the Boer issue recently on X. So it says that, Elon Musk has actually waded again into South Africa's politics, tweeting on Sunday about a major political party that is actively promoting white genocide. So this is actually the rhetoric that's actually being pushed by Elon Musk on X. Okay, so under this tweet, he actually shared a link of the video of EFF's Julius Malema singing Dubuli Punu, which is Kill the Boer, at a rally on Friday. I think this was now last Friday, the human rights, probably the human rights celebration, where he made a speech about the whole Marikana massacre. All right, so it says, the report says that Musk expressed outrage at a whole arena chanting about killing white people. All right. So then US President Donald Trump, who counts Musk as the world's richest man and a close ally, then shared a screenshot of this same post on Truth Social. Bro, it's getting serious. Really. South Africans really have to be careful with the way, or probably prepared with what might be coming. Donald Trump shared Elon Musk's tweet on Truth Social on this whole thing. And then US Secretary of State now, Marco Rubio, as you saw in my last video, then penned down his own tweet denouncing the song as a chant that incites violence, and it urged the South African government to protect Afrikaner or other disfavored minorities, and reiterated an invitation to Afrikaners to settle in the US. So that's why one of the reasons I like this report in Al Jazeera. It says, what is this song? And many people have been trying to wonder, as you could hear now, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, all right, who has been an activist herself for a long time. And for those of you who do not know Ayaan Hirsi Ali is a Somali-born Dutch American activist and writer who is also a politician. I think she served in the Dutch parliament, all right? She has been known for her critique of Islam's compatibility with Western democracy, and she also fights for human rights, all right? She says that her description says she's a former Dutch parliamentarian, and she has authored many best-selling books and collaborated on a controversial film called Submission, all right? So that is how popular this whole issue with Kill the Boer and all that is really going. So on her podcast now, she now hosted Mark Oppenheimer, as you could hear in this in the video, and many people are also trying to really understand this whole thing with Kill the Boer, outsiders trying to understand why, because it was earlier criticized by Musk, but then it is actually something that seems to be coming up again, especially in terms of human rights. And so people are really asking, what is it? So Al Jazeera has this really interesting report, you know, on this whole thing. It says, the isiXhosa struggle song, Dubul Ipunu, the title literally translates to Kill the Boer, but can also mean Kill the Afrikaner. It says that it emerged in the 1980s as an opposition to more than 3 decades of apartheid rule, which spilled onto the streets of South Africa's townships. And then the title of the song is often translated as Kill the White Farmer. This is according to Al Jazeera now. It says that Boer is the Afrikaans word for farmer, and on one level, it simply means farmer of another race. But since the 19th century, when Britain fought 2 wars against the Boers, it has also meant Afrikaans persons, all right? So it says that the song's lyrics essentially repeat the title's words, shoot the Boer ad infinitum, describing the Boers as cowards and dogs. So that's the potency of, you know, why many Afrikaans people really react to this song the way they do. So in other words, it says that the song was a part of the theater of mass insurrection, says historian Thula Simpson. That's how it is remembered to this day. Simpson then added that the song is almost always accompanied by toyi toyin, which is a protest dance that remains synonymous with black political rallies in South Africa, and is often punctuated by people pretending to shoot Kalashnikov rifles, all right? So now, it says that despite being extremely controversial, the song continues to be sung in democratic South Africa. Yeah, this is for me where I'm really also asking questions like, what place does the song have in a democratic space, all right? But anyway, this report argues, saying that most notably by Julius Malema and former President Jacob Zuma, although Jacob Zuma's version is quite different. This report says that both of them have left the ANC, and the ANC was a party of Nelson Mandela, as we know. Now, it then argues, saying that, is this song really a call for white genocide? Now, it says Malema has repeatedly stated, both in court and in interviews, that we are not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now. And the facts bear this view out. There has never been anything close to an attempted genocide of white South Africans. Trump and his supporters often claim that white South African farmers are being murdered in their thousands. But statistics provided by AfriForum and the Transvaal Agricultural Union, both groups which are actually sympathetic to white farmers, show that 60 farmers across all races are killed every year. And the country sees 19,000 murders annually. Now, what then is actually the issue, and if the song can be legally sung, all right? First of all, it says here that Malema has had to defend his decision to sing the song in multiple court cases since 2010. Many of the earlier rulings went against him, finding the song's lyrics constituted hate speech and were not protected by the right of freedom of speech enshrined in South Africa's constitution. However, most recently, the tide turned to the favor of Julius Malema when the Johannesburg High Court finding in 2022 found AfriForum, that AfriForum, which had challenged the right to sing the song, had failed to prove that Malema was inciting harm against white South Africans of the Afrikaner descent by singing it. So that was the position of this Johannesburg High Court in 2022. It says that in the debate, I think this was kind of like an appeal. The case had actually been first carried out in one court. I think the AfriForum now went to appeal, or probably, anyway, whatever it is. It says that this case was the ruling of 2012 the ruling of 2010 was actually struck down in 2022 because the AfriForum failed to prove that Malema was inciting harm against white South Africans of Afrikaner descent, all right? So this is the reason why probably it now feels legal to continue to sing this song in a democratic South Africa. So it says that the view was confirmed by the Supreme Court of Appeals in 2024, which ruled that the reasonably well-informed person would appreciate that when Mr. Malema sang Dubuli Puunu, he was not actually calling for farmers or white South Africans of Afrikaans descent to be shot, nor was he romanticizing the violence exacted against them in farm attacks. They would understand that he was using a historic struggle song with the performance gestures that go with it as a provocative means of advancing his party's political agenda. So this was a court of appeal as recently as 2024. But anyway, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Marco Rubio really are not having this. It says that, why do Musk, Trump, and Rubio care? The song is one of South Africa's political hotcakes. Others include the Expropriation Without Compensation Act and the policy of black economic empowerment that are inflaming Trump's Make America Great Again movement. Trump has spoken about the large-scale killing of farmers in South Africa in 2018 as well. It says that Trump and Musk know that if they dangle any of these issues, says this Thula Simpson, this historian, they will certainly get a response. South Africa has become a useful foil in America's domestic wars. And interestingly, it says that Musk and Trump's response to Kill the Boer is more extreme than AfriForum's. So this is a report from Al Jazeera anyway. So anyway, this is where this whole report, especially from the perspective of Al Jazeera, actually is. And it appears that Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and Elon Musk are not having this. So they are deciding to wage the frontal, counter offensive, and I think one of the ways they want to do this is by the new ambassador, U.S. ambassador to South Africa. I think his name is Brent Bozell III, as U.S. ambassador to South Africa, who is clearly, according to the report in my last video I made, is said to be a really firm supporter of Israel and Israeli issues, all right, and is a conservative, so to speak. I think a Christian conservative. So it actually, for me, is kind of like a response by Trump saying that, Ibrahim Rasool had been kicked out from the US as a persona non grata based on a speech he made on a seminar where he actually was denouncing the US regime as probably slamming Trump for what he called, so to speak, a conservative approach to the left. But now sending this conservative as well, Brent Bozell, to be ambassador in South Africa, I'm really wondering how South African government will react, if they're going to kick him out, if they're going to reject this nomination, because I think this nomination would have to even be accepted on the side of South Africa, and that. So whatever that response would be, would just escalate this thing further, or either probably begin a peaceful resolution, which would then force many critics to argue that South Africa gave way to some kind of like acceding to this approach by the US and all of that, which I just think it's a really difficult place to be, for South Africa. This whole diplomatic tension between South Africa and the US. I don't want this video to be too long, but I really do not see this whole thing going down really good. It's just been, in the words of Neil de Beer, own goals to own goals to own goals in South Africa's relationship with the United States of America. Honestly, I really don't know. I'm just going to keep watching and seeing how far this thing goes. But what do you guys think about this whole video and the issues discussed here? Share your thoughts in the comments.